This is a big one. I mean, we always talk about this being a really important election, but this is a really important election.
This election, Ohioans have major choices to make on their ballots. At the national level, there is, of course, the presidential race getting a lot of attention. Then, Ohioans could decide which party controls the U.S. Senate with a hotly contested Senate race. At the state level, there is Issue 1, which will determine how political maps are drawn for generations to come. Plus, Ohio's own state Supreme Court hangs in the balance as Democrats seek to take the majority for the first time in 40 years. Thank you for joining us for Face the State this Sunday morning. I'm Doug Petcash. Today, we're taking a closer look at two of the major state-level races, including Issue 1, which is creating some confusion. But first, early voting is now underway across Ohio at Board of Elections offices in all 88 counties. Voters are also starting to mail in the absentee ballots they requested. The Franklin County Board of Elections has been very busy this first week of early voting. Voter turnout is always highest for presidential elections. For example, in 2020, 75% of registered voters cast a ballot in Ohio. Keep in mind, the state has about 8 million registered voters. Secretary of State Frank LaRose does not make predictions on what percentage of voters will turn out, but he expects it to be strong this election.
I think we're going to see high turnout again. That's been consistent throughout my 5 years as Secretary of State. We've set records not only in 2020, but 2022 for a gubernatorial election. We saw record numbers, and I think that trend is going to continue.
And here's a look at the numbers for day one of early voting. Statewide, more than 61,000 people voted at their Board of Elections office. Franklin County had the highest turnout at more than 4,200 for that day, and that number is nearly twice as high as 2016. Hamilton County, where Cincinnati is, and Cuyahoga, home to Cleveland, had the next two highest totals. So far, nearly 1 million absentee ballots have been sent out across the state, and those are starting to come back in. We were there at the Franklin County Board of Elections on day one of voting. It was busy, but voters tell us it didn't take long at all. Some of them also shared who they're supporting and what issues brought them out. The line moved steadily inside the Franklin County Board of Elections as voters checked in and then checked voting off their to-do lists. There was broad consensus. It was smooth sailing.
Very smoothly. They've got a big system in there, lots of poll workers. The line went very quickly.
We're probably done with the whole process in 5 minutes.
Yeah. There were enough people. There were tons of booths out there. So, yeah, it was great. I highly recommend it if you can.
Lieutenant Governor John Husted cast his ballot early, too.
This is a privilege and an honor as an American. We should celebrate it every time we get a chance to make our voice heard.
While voters all agreed the process worked well, they don't see eye to eye on who should be president. Some support former President Trump.
Today, the issues that we have were not seen during his presidency in terms of jobs, in terms of the economy.
I just look at what's happening today with the border, with the economy, with the wars going on.
Others support Vice President Harris.
Well, I'm interested in having a woman president, and I hope to see it in my lifetime.
What brought me out is to make sure that Donald Trump is not the president.
Several also mentioned the U.S. Senate race between Senator Sherrod Brown and Republican Bernie Moreno, and Issue 1 as key votes for them. Issue 1 is the Citizens Not Politicians proposed constitutional amendment over who draws our political maps.
Because I think that's going to be the one that affects Ohioans most after the presidency.
Local issues are top of mind as well.
And the library in Westerville is up for a vote also.
The Board of Elections hoping the weeks ahead go just as smoothly.
Obviously, this is kind of the beginning of our Super Bowl as we gear up for this 28-day early voting cycle.
If you want to vote in person, just head to your County Board of Elections office any weekday between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. You'll also be able to vote early on the final 2 weekends leading up to November 5th. Make sure you bring a valid photo ID to vote, such as your Ohio driver's license, a state of Ohio ID, U.S. military ID, or a U.S. passport. One of the issues voters are deciding is who draws Ohio's political maps. It's all part of Issue 1. The proposed constitutional amendment aims to put the map-making process in the hands of citizens instead of politicians. The group behind it says this will help end gerrymandering in Ohio. Those against it say it will require gerrymandering. Here's a look at what the amendment would change.
The proposed constitutional amendment will appear on your ballot as Issue 1. It aims to put the political map-making process in the hands of citizens, not politicians. No politicians, lobbyists, or political party members will be allowed on the commission. It would replace the current redistricting commission, made up of 7 elected lawmakers, with a 15-member citizens commission, consisting of 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, and 5 independents. The proposed amendment says the members will be chosen from a demographic and geographic cross-section of the state. So how would they be selected? The 4 lawmakers on the state ballot board would choose 4 retired Ohio judges, 2 from each major party, who would then whittle down the applicants to the 15 sitting members. The new commission would need 9 of the 15 members to approve the redistricting maps. Once the commission has a draft redistricting plan, it would have to hold at least 5 public hearings across the state, then 2 more public hearings on the final plan. That's an opportunity for you to weigh in on the new maps before they go into effect.
And just to be clear, a yes vote on Issue 1 is a vote for these changes. A no vote is a vote against these changes and to keep the current structure in place. With an important decision facing Ohio voters, many people still have questions, so we went to both sides of Issue 1 to get answers. We talked to retired Ohio Supreme Court Chief Justice Maureen O'Connor, who is part of Citizens Not Politicians, the group behind the amendment. We also heard from Matt Dole. He is a spokesperson for Ohio Works, a group against it. Both sides say the main impact Issue 1 will have is on gerrymandering in Ohio. That's the process of manipulating the boundaries of political maps to favor one party. However, they disagree about which side would end gerrymandering.
Issue 1 is a constitutional amendment created by citizens to be placed on the ballot so that the citizens of Ohio can vote and amend our Constitution. Issue 1 deals with an amendment that will ban gerrymandering in the state of Ohio. When you talk to voters about this and you explain that this amendment will ban gerrymandering and it will obviously give voters a better legislature and better members of Congress that will be reflective of the voters of Ohio and not political parties trying to secure more power and create a supermajority so they can ignore the voters and do whatever their party and the lobbyists want. So I think voters understand what's at stake here.
Matt Dole with the opposition says Issue 1 would enshrine gerrymandering in the Constitution.
Well, first of all, voting no on Issue 1 ends gerrymandering, stops gerrymandering from being in the Constitution. And I know that both because I know the dictionary definition of gerrymandering, which is starting with an end goal in mind and drawing lines to that end goal. And the proponents of Issue 1 want to start with the end in mind that districts are going to be 55-45 or 60-40 or whatever calculation they want to come up with, and then they want to draw lines to get to that end. That is the dictionary definition of gerrymandering.
What he's referencing is Section 6 of the proposed amendment. It outlines how the commission should draw the political maps to prevent gerrymandering. The amendment reads, quote, to ban partisan gerrymandering and prohibit the use of redistricting plans that favor one political party and disfavor others. The statewide proportion of districts shall correspond closely to the statewide partisan preferences of the voters of Ohio. Under that, it explains that correspond closely means the proportion of the districts cannot deviate by more than 3 percentage points in either direction from the statewide partisan preferences of Ohio voters. Another concern brought up against Issue 1 is how to hold the 15 Citizen Commission members accountable because they won't be picked by voters. Dole says that's why we should keep the map-making process in the hands of elected officials.
I think that right now we have politicians who are elected every 2 or 4 years who draw the maps, and those people have to face the voters. those people are accountable to the voters and must face election. So if Ohioans are really upset with the maps that were, for instance, adopted unanimously and in a bipartisan manner, if they don't like that, they should go out in November and vote against the people who are on that commission, or in 2 years vote against them when the statewide electeds are up. That's accountability.
Now, those 4 issue ones say they are not able to vote out the elected officials making the maps because they're already gerrymandered to keep them in office. We brought the concerns about holding the proposed commission members accountable to Justice O'Connor. Here's her response.
I might also address one of the concerns that I'm sure you've heard, that this is an unaccountable group of people with a blank check and, therefore don't vote for it, citizens. Okay, that's all untrue. In fact, most of the things you're going to hear, if not all, from the opposition are outright deceptions, and intentionally so. So this 15-member commission, if someone is not pulling their weight, if someone is not living up to their oath, if someone is not doing their job, that person will be kicked off of the commission. Okay, there is accountability.
As for claims about unlimited funding for the new commission if issue 1 were to pass, O'Connor says those are false and there is a limit.
If you look in the amendment, which I'm sure the opposition has, they just choose to ignore this fact, is that there is a dollar amount in the Constitution and it is related to what the opposition, the people that proposed the maps in 2021 and 2022 spent in order to do that.
And we can confirm the amendment sets a budget. However, the budget reads, quote, not less than $7 million. Still, O'Connor says they expect it to actually cost less than that.
I don't expect $7 million to be used by this commission. I really don't. But we use that number because that's the dollar amount that the Redistricting Commission and the legislature spent in 21 and 22. And, if it was good for them, why not?
Another part of the amendment says, quote, the General Assembly shall make separate and timely appropriations to cover all the commission's expenses in any related litigation. That's something Dole tells us is another concern.
Says that the legislature is required to appropriate enough money for the Redistricting Commission to do its work, to hire consultants, and to hire lawyers. And of course, when you hear the word lawyers, the money meter starts to tick up pretty aggressively. And so this is going to cost Ohioans millions of dollars, and it could cost them tens of millions of dollars with no limit whatsoever.
Of course, you'll have the final word on all of this when you vote. You can read the full amendment text for yourself at 10tv.com/featured links. This election, there will also be other major races for voters to weigh in on, including one that's flying a bit under the radar but has a big impact: the Ohio Supreme Court. Ohio is among only just a few states where voters could flip partisan control of their Supreme Court. That's because 3 seats are on the ballot. Right now, the court is a 4-3 Republican majority. But if Democrats win all 3 seats, they will hold the court's majority for the first time in more than 40 years. University of Cincinnati political science professor David Niven says who ends up winning those seats could have major impacts on checks and balances.
This is an incredibly consequential race that almost nobody's thinking about because, it doesn't get the spotlight the way, the more famous races do. But we're talking about basically whether the legislature can do whatever it wants or whether the legislature is going to have to behave and follow the Ohio Constitution.
And here is who is on the ballot. Democratic Justice Michael Donnelly is running for re-election against Republican Megan Shanahan. The next race is a battle between 2 incumbents. Democratic Justice Melody Stewart is trying to keep her seat because Republican Justice Joseph Deters is leaving his seat to challenge her. With Deters leaving his seat, that means Democrat Lisa Forbes and Republican Dan Hawkins are competing for the open spot. And when you vote, every Supreme Court justice candidate will have their party listed by their name on the ballot. And we've made it easy for you to look at your sample ballot. All you have to do is text the word VOTE to that number on your screen, 614-460-3345. We will then send our story to you. The Ohio State University is taking a new approach to Election Day, all in hopes of getting more students to vote. the university is encouraging instructors to assign asynchronous classwork, such as homework, instead of meeting in person for class on November 5th. Instructors are still allowed to hold in-person class if they wish. The goal is to give students more time in their schedule to take part in the election. Right now, this is just a new one-time trial to see if it works. Still ahead on Face the State, 2 hurricanes and 1 tornado. An Ohio family dealing with a triple whammy of natural disasters, now cleaning up for the 3rd time this year. Plus, heading in to help after 2 hurricanes. Dozens of Ohioans are on the ground lending a skillful hand in the recovery effort. The Salvation Army is in studio next with how they're bringing comfort to thousands. Welcome back to Face the State. It was a 1-2 punch. First, Hurricane Helene left behind widespread destruction across the southeast and killed more than 200 people. Then, just 2 weeks later, Hurricane Milton swept across Florida. Recovery from both storms will take a long time, and Ohio is stepping up to help. First responders from Central Ohio are now in Florida. They are part of Task Force 1. That group was first sent out nearly 3 weeks ago to Florida just before Hurricane Helene hit. After helping the area, they were moved to help recovery efforts in North Carolina. And now, in the aftermath of Milton, they are back in Florida doing it all over again. AEP Ohio crews are also in Florida helping those in need. The electric company sent 94 workers from about 40 different service centers in the state. This is video of them getting ready to leave Columbus. They are setting poles and restoring power. We're told they could be there for up to 2 weeks. The Salvation Army of Central Ohio is also helping with hurricane relief efforts. It sent 2 majors, or a major and a captain, I should say, to help in areas ravaged by Hurricane Helene in North Carolina and Georgia and other states, and now also helping in Florida. Joining me to talk about the Salvation Army's relief efforts is Major Tricia Brennan with the Salvation Army of Central Ohio. Major, thanks for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you.
So first of all, tell us, what are the major and the captain going to be focusing on during their deployment there?
Primarily, their focus will be on serving meals and to provide emotional and spiritual care to those that need it when they come to our mobile feeding units, the canteens.
From what you're hearing on the ground, how bad is the situation?
We know in the state of Georgia, where Major Jenny Shurtleff is serving, that their primary damage was the wind damage, with the trees down on the power lines and on the homes, that they've been without electricity for the duration of the landfall from the hurricane. They're starting to get some of the electricity restored now, but primarily that has been the most damaging effect of this hurricane in Georgia. We're still learning more about what's going on in the Tampa area, certainly, but with with Helene, a lot of it was the wind damage in that state of Georgia.
And what's the captain going to be focusing on?
Captain Dustin Fitch, he is going to be the logistics chief in Tampa when he arrives. He'll be overseeing the meal service and the canteens, which are our mobile feeding units throughout the state where they go.
And we have a graphic that we can show that gives just an idea of the kinds of help the Salvation Army is providing right now. And these were the latest numbers as of Thursday. So they are no doubt higher now, but you can just see what the folks are helping out with there. Hundreds of thousands of meals and meal kits, drinks, snacks, and also, as you mentioned, providing spiritual and emotional care for almost 28,000 people right now. So do you focus on the immediate needs when you have the people there on the ground?
We do. So we always start locally where a disaster is, and then we balloon out and prepare from there. So whatever the immediate needs are, and typically it's the feeding and supporting the first responders and those that are, stranded where they are, that's typically where the Salvation Army steps in quickly.
So will you be sending more help, or does that kind of depend on how the situation develops?
It does depend on how the situation develops, but with these 2 hurricanes, we are anticipating sending more support down. We do know the Salvation Army is broken up into territories, and we are located in the Eastern Territory. Of course, this took place in the Southern Territory. We have 66 individuals from the Eastern Territory already there, and we'll be sending another 22 from our territory down to the Southern Territory to help. So it will depend on the extensiveness of the need, but we anticipate needing to be down there for a while.
Are there easy ways for people who are watching who may want to help, but obviously they can't go to do anything?
Right now, the best way to help is with your donations. The reason for that is with so much devastation and so much chaos that comes with a disaster like this, there isn't usually storage areas that are available or staging areas. So the money that comes in quickly enables us to purchase even within those local communities to help stimulate those communities that are the most affected, by the disaster.
And that money, if people are concerned, that they think it may just go into a general pot, they can actually be specific about a donation and what its intended use would be, correct?
Absolutely. Whatever you earmark that donation for, if you want it just disaster relief, if you want it Hurricane Helene or Hurricane Milton or whichever, it goes directly there. 100% of it goes right to that disaster area. That doesn't stay anywhere else but for the disaster it's been earmarked for.
And finally today, Major, this is coming now at a busy time for you as you're gearing up for the holidays, right?
Mm-hmm. It is. It's busy for all of us, but certainly that's what the Salvation Army is for. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for coming in to give us some perspective on the situation and what's being done to help. Thank you, Major.
Thank you so much.
So good to see you again.
You as well.
Thank you. Well, when we come back on Face the State, not once, not twice, but 3 times, an Ohio family has had to deal with storm damage. Their run of bad luck when it comes to natural disasters. Hear from them next. Talk about a stroke of bad weather luck. First, a tornado ruined their home in Indian Lake. Then 2 hurricanes were forecasted to hit their second home in St. Petersburg, Florida. This Central Ohio family has been at the center of 3 natural disasters in less than a year. 10 TV's Carla Rogner has their story.
The Hoffman family was in Florida when devastating tornadoes hit their neighborhood here in Indian Lake. Then the last few weeks, they've watched from their home in Indian Lake as Helene, then Milton, made their way towards their home in Florida.
Had to get a new roof and redo the corner of that house.
It's been a busy 7 months of making repairs in Indian Lake.
All of the downspouts, the gutters were either gone or just hanging on.
Cynthia Hoffman's home is at the center of the destruction left by a deadly March tornado. She and her husband had tens of thousands of dollars in damage, and many of her neighbors are still picking up the pieces.
We just got everything completed this past week, actually. Got the last insurance check and paid our contractor, and then this hurricane. So
their second home is in St. Petersburg, Florida. This was the flooding in their neighborhood after Helene. For the last week, they've watched from Ohio as their community in Florida braced for impact once again.
We were in the cone, and we were right in the middle of the cone for a long time. And we did the best we could with, buttoning up the house.
They are just down the street from Tropicana Field, where Milton ripped the roof off the stadium.
But yeah, it's going to be very devastating, obviously, for a lot of Floridians.
So far, the Hoffmans are thankfully hearing their home may have only sustained minor damage. When they set up in Florida about 10 years ago, they knew of the risk of hurricanes, but never considered 3 natural disasters in 2 cities in 1 year.
It's been stressful, but you realize you're so fortunate to have great neighbors, and we all watch out for each other, and we all pitch in and help out. We have great neighbors here. We have great neighbors in Florida. So we're very fortunate to have all that.
The Hoffmans are hoping to go down to Florida and check out the damage for themselves soon. Reporting from Indian Lake, Carla Rogner, 10 TV News.
And that is all of our time for this Sunday morning. Thank you for joining me this week for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. I'll see you next Sunday at 11:30.